as the year comes to a close, let's wrap up this series with Stardew Valley's winter recipes. We've already had 3 of these videos where I recreate every dish from Stardew Valley in real life. And if you haven't, I highly recommend you watch them. There are only 20 recipes left to make, and as you can imagine, some of them are the weird ones. Nevertheless, let's get cooking. First off, we're going to make fried calamari. Now, we made eel fish and chips before, and we're going to use the same batter recipe. In fact, if I recall correctly, these recipes were shot back to back to avoid batter wastage. So, as I show you the same footage of me mixing flour, cornstarch, baking soda, water and dark beer, let's take the opportunity to review the rules of the challenge. Rule 1. I must use every ingredient in the Stardew recipe, however I may add ingredients to improve the recipe, otherwise the chocolate cake wouldn't even have chocolate in it. Rule number 2. I may substitute ingredients, especially if we're stocking rare fishes, stuff that doesn't exist, or stuff I cannot get my hands on in my country. But I'll try to match as closely as I can. And finally, it is generally okay to use ingredients that are derived from the Stardew Valley ingredient. For instance, I'll use corn flour when the recipe calls for corn, or cream when the recipe calls for milk. Filming from a safe distance, we're dunking our calamari rings in batter, then deep frying them in neutral oil. Honestly, great dish. Batter crunchy, calamari chewy, it just needs a spritz of lemon and we're golden. The next dish is a very simple dessert and it's great. Let's put some rice to steam while I tell you about mango sticky rice. We're going to dice the mango and just leave it as is. Frankly, mango is such a great fruit on its own, it doesn't need anything done to it. The rice, however, we're going to improve. And so I'm warming up some coconut milk, sugar and a pinch of salt on the stove before adding it bit by bit to our rice that's just undercooked. Use the good old method of rice in a bowl to get clean dome shape. Add your mango dice, black sesame seeds for color, and you get a simple but effective dessert. Moving on to the Carp Surprise. This one really gave me a headache, as it says in the description that it's just bland and oily, and also how was I going to make it a surprise? Let's not think about that right now, and just steam what is definitely carp. Just trust me, it's carp, don't check. By steaming we get the blandest flavor while getting fish that's cooked just right. Now we're going to add parmesan to a pan and just let it do its thing until it becomes some sort of parmesan crepe. Once we move it out, it will solidify and oh, I wonder what's underneath. Let's fetch our heavy-duty iridium spoon and find out. Surprise, it's bland. Enough shenanigans, let's make fried mushrooms. Gotta put that mushroom cave to good use. Since these are dried morels, we'll revive them using white wine and let them soak in the fridge overnight. Now we can chop them, but also do keep the morel-infused wine for cooking. We're already ready for the stove and we're going to fry some onions, garlic and a few common mushrooms. Deglaze with the wine when needed. Once they're about done, we're adding morels and, right before finishing, parsley. Amazing dish, albeit a bit pricey. It's a new day. Now, let's make curry. This isn't your typical curry, this is tropical curry. Judging by the icon, it seems this dish is served in a bowl made out of pineapple. So we're going to fashion one using our iridium spoon, trying to extract pineapple dice in the process. My phone had a very weird and worrying bug during filming this recipe, and luckily the only footage I lost was the sautéing of the pineapple dice. But we're okay, we can sauté some onions and garlic in a wok, as well as gochujang chili paste, and then add mushroom, red bell pepper and the pineapple. Then we can finally flood the entire thing with coconut milk. Once everyone is cooked, we can add curry powder, black pepper, soy sauce, and cilantro. I don't know why this happened, but the curry turned very green. Like, you can't really see it here, but it was really green. But anyway, in our pineapple bowl, that's way too small for a full meal, we're adding rice and covering with our delicious tropical curry. Awesome result, we'll make again. Maybe skip the pineapple bowl. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hang on, he told us this video had the disgusting recipes, but so far we have only gotten really good ones. Well, it's time to talk about glazed yam. We're still going to assume our favorite Northern American game developer means sweet potato, and we're going to dice a big one after boiling it. Then in a pot I'm going to melt some salted butter, add glucose syrup and sugar to get a nice caramelly syrup. Just as it's boiling, I'm going to pour it on top of our diced yam, and in the oven it goes. To be honest, the result wasn't as bad as I had imagined, but still very bad, sorry. In order to get back to a more palatable recipe, we're going to make Kha Soup. Sandy sent me this recipe in the mail and I've been wanting to try it since. While the shrimp is cooking, we're going to dice some red onions, chop a few green onions, and chop a lot of garlic because I love garlic. Also chop some ginger as well. Chives and lemongrass join the party. Is that enough ingredients? Nope, we're also going to dice mushrooms and broccoli. To complete our mise en place, we're going to put some coconut milk in a pot and put the lemongrass in here to infuse. This way we can fish it out later. Everything gets cooked in the big pot using broth every now and then to deglaze. Once everything is cooked, we're going to add our milk as well as our shrimp and black pepper. Garnish with chives and a generous spritz of lime. And wow, wow, these flavors are incredible. Let's get one thing out of the way. The lucky lunch. And for this we have a... Oh, what's that? Look, it's a sea cucumber. Since this recipe is already a lost cause anyway, let's just assemble our cucumber, a poorly cut tortilla, and some blue jazz pedals. Ladies and gentlemen, the lucky lunch. Now let's get this thing out of my sight. Bonjour! Today we are making escargot, oui oui, hon hon! There are basically two ways to make escargots. One where we use a pan and a lot of garlic and butter, but today we're going the other way, escargot de Bourgogne. To make this, you need to soften a lot of butter in a bowl and then chop some parsley, shallots and garlic. Mix them thoroughly with the butter and then it's time to stuff the escargots back into their shell and filling the rest of the shell with our enhanced butter. When you complete this step, they can all go in the oven to bake and it gives you a dish that is basically an excuse to eat a lot of butter. Funny enough, this was the second time in my life I ate escargot as, contrary to a popular belief, this dish isn't really that common in France. One more opportunity to try new stuff. I learned a lot with this project, and if you too want to start learning new things, I suggest you check out today's sponsor Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform with thousands of classes to sharpen your skills and discover new passions. With winter approaching, I'll definitely keep learning new cooking techniques, and I've been checking out a few video editing classes as well. If starting your own YouTube channel is something you've been wanting to do, they have learning paths that are a curated list of classes to explore new topics from scratch. It's not just cooking and videos though, you can find classes on anything from ceramics to music production to game development. There are new topics being added regularly, like this one to finally figure out what you can do with AI, or if that's not your thing, this one about starting a creative career. And if you're curious but not sure, just tell them about your interests and goals and let the platform create tailored recommendations. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. You can get started today. Let's move on to the dish of the sea, which requires hash browns. We made hash browns before in the spring video, so we're going to breathe through it. Peel the potatoes, shred the potatoes, season the potatoes, squeeze the potatoes, and we're set. Now Stardew Valley 1.6 introduced the cookout kit, so we can now cook outside, which is a good thing since the other ingredient is sardines. Nice! I've been dreading to make the roots platter for a while, but now is the time. I think we're going to make a simplified winter variant on the confit bialdi from the movie Ratatouille. To do this, I'm slicing a few winter roots, namely turnip, cave carrots and potato, making very thin slices. Using a ring mold, I cut down the potatoes to a clean round shape that's about the size of the turnip slices. Then I'm arranging everything on a dish, alternating roots for every slice. Unfortunately, the carrots are way smaller than the other two, so I'm placing 2 of them every time. I'm using a thick sauce made of reduced chicken stock, veggie stock, garlic paste and tomato puree, and sprinkling a few herbs and bay leaves on top. In the oven it goes for an extended period of time at a lowish temperature. We'll see how it goes. It's not bad, it's not great. The root splatter was doomed to fail. I think we'll be better off making cookies. In a bowl, I'm combining flour, baking soda and baking powder. In another bowl, I'm combining sugar, butter, mixing until sort of homogeneous, then adding 2 eggs. Once that mixture is done, I'll add our dry ingredients and mix again before adding roughly chopped chocolate chips. Let's make little cookie balls out of this dough and move to the oven. Uh-oh. Well, looks like this is a failed batch. Too much butter. It tastes good, but looks like a derelict Jojo Mart. Let's try again adding more flour. Yes, that's a better result. In fact, you can adjust the butter and flour ratio at will to get your desired texture. Moving on to chowder, a dish that, from the picture, looks like it's served inside of a bread bowl. I'll start by cooking a few clams in a pot before reserving the juice and shelling the clams. Then in the one large pot we're going to melt some butter before cooking a lot of leeks. If the leeks need liquid, you can deglaze with the juice from the clams. Once they're cooked, I'll add flour, let that cook for a while, then add diced potatoes and the rest of the clam juice. We're going to let that simmer to cook the potatoes, and then add milk, cream, our clams, black pepper, and paprika. While all the flavors are mixing, we're going to fashion our bread bowl. Don't worry, I did eat all of the bread I removed with eggs. No food waste in this house. Fill up the bowl, garnish with parsley, and that's a nice chowder. What's even nicer is that the bowl itself is edible. It's very nice to make a meal every once in a while where there are no dishes to wash. No dishes at all. None. Absolute delight. Today we're walking the streets of Paris. I've got a confession to make. I don't drink coffee. I don't own anything resembling a coffee machine, so for the triple shot espresso, I suggest we cheat a little and order one from a cafe.
Bonjour, je vais prendre un triple expresso s'il vous plaît. Ouais, 3 expressos dans une tasse.
And after a thorough investigation, it appears I still dislike coffee. Let's improvise something for the seafoam pudding. Told you this video would have all the weird leftover recipes. In the blender, I put seaweed, shallots, parsley, pieces of cooked fish, and a lot of cream before blending until smooth-ish. Then I tried to put that in a siphon. That did not end well. So here's a final mixture over rice that has been mixed with squid ink. It tasted okay. What did end up tasting more than okay was the cheese cauliflower. 2 ingredients, cheese, cauliflower. I started by making a thick, cheesy bechamel sauce by cooking some flour, milk and butter in a pan before adding egg yolks and progressively adding more milk to get a bechamel. Then I poured a lot of cheddar and, once it had melted, Gruyere cheese. I then took a while to separate the cauliflower flowers into bite-sized pieces before dousing everything in cheese sauce. After a short trip to the oven, this ended up being one of the simplest but very good dishes to come out of the Stardew Kitchen. Alright, so the next recipe is baked fish, and I'll take some liberties with it. It's supposed to be 2 fishes, and they're both pretty hard to obtain where I live. So we'll make do with bass and a bunch of lemon, onions, tomatoes, and garlic. You can add parsley or any herbs you like, but I didn't have any on hand, so I added cumin seeds and chili flakes. In the oven it goes, and soon it's time to show Willy our creation. Let's move on to the algae soup and pale broth. 2 recipes that are very much similar, and also I couldn't find any white edible algae, so I had to improvise a bit. Let's start with the algae soup. We're going to make a rich dashi. You've seen me add boiling water to a bunch of teeny tiny dried anchovies. In a large pot I'm going to add garlic and a bunch of miso paste, adding soy sauce when the mixture gets too dry. After a while we're going to add boiling water, dried shiitake mushrooms, green kombu, and seaweed. We can add the water from the anchovies and let that simmer. After it's done, we're straining the soup and adding a mixture of equal parts soy sauce and mirin to taste. And we get very good dashi. You can have it with rice, you can have it over rice, but honestly, even if you just poured me a glass of the stuff as an appetizer, I'd be pretty stoked. Now for the pale broth. As I said, no luck finding white algae, so we're going to make whatever we can. We're using the same anchovy water before boiling some kombu and seaweed in there. It's a lot paler than the miso-based soup, but not enough, so we'll add diced tofu, chives, peas and nori seaweed. For a very nice, very light broth. And now, for the final dish of the Stardew Kitchen series, some of you will already know that the only thing missing is the chocolate cake. So sit down, relax, watch this sugar turn into caramel, and then we'll pour it over some hazelnuts we have left over from the fall season video. Once the caramel is back to room temp, we will blend everything and add water bit by bit to get a chunky praline paste. Then I'm going to melt some chocolate in a pot with some almond milk. And bear with me, because all we're doing now isn't even the cake proper yet. While it's melting, I'm creaming butter in a bowl, which will soften it and make it malleable enough to mix with our praline paste. Once that's done, I'm adding the melted chocolate to get something I can only describe as spoon ready. But I must resist and add all of these crispy wafer flake crepe things to make our final paste crunchy and delicious. This is just the bottom layer of our cake, and I'm going to put it in the fridge to firm up while we address the actual cake. Let's start with the dry ingredients. In the largest bowl, I'm adding flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, and espresso powder. After a good whisking to combine, I'm adding the wet ingredients, namely eggs, no need to use void eggs in this recipe, almond milk, vegetable oil, vanilla extract. I'll mix to combine into a homogeneous mixture, and then little by little I'm going to add a full cup of boiling water. Then it's time to ladle our cake batter into a well-buttered mold, and in the oven it goes. After coming back from the trip to the volcano, the cake is fluffy and moist and delicious, and it's time to assemble. Whoops, it seems the bottom part came off, but we'll be able to hide that. I got a turntable thing for big Stardew cakes, and I already placed the bottom layer, so we can go ahead and add our first cake on top. I say first cake because I secretly baked a second cake, since, as you see in the game, the cake has 3 stories. Don't worry about all the leftover pieces. They will be used to make the top level, and anything remaining was eaten. In order to fully assemble our cake building, the cement and stucco will be buttercream frosting, which is basically just cocoa powder and butter. Whoops, the yellow sweater is clearly taking hits, but this is only fitting as this is the final recipe of the series. After mixing for a while, I'm adding confectioner's sugar and a spoonful of almond milk. Now we can go back to assembling our cake and cover everything with frosting. and here is the final cake. Let me tell you, it was delicious. The entire thing was eaten in an embarrassingly short amount of time. That's it, we did it. 80 Stardew Valley recipes, well, 81 if you count the moss soup. I want to thank everyone for sticking around until the end of the series and for all your nice comments and cooking tips. This project was a bit crazy and definitely more complex than I anticipated, but I thought of it as a nice farewell to Stardew Valley after all these years. Check out the official Stardew Valley cookbook that has way better recipes than mine, and check out Skillshare using the link in the video description. Take care everybody, and I guess I'll see you in Haunted Chocolatier.